What is up? Welcome to episode 3 of Etsy Jam. In this episode, we talk about some things we've learned from the Rock Your Photos reports and how you can learn from them too. Richie also leads a chat about failing forward and how to fearlessly press forward with your craft and keep learning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Etsy Jam. I'm Gordon Hardy. Here with me is Richie Peplin and Kevs. And today our topic is failing forward. And so we'll be chatting about that. And before we get into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about things that we've learned through our feedback on our Rock Your Photos report that we put together. You can get to this if you go to marmalead.com. There's an apps link in the top navigation there. And if you click that, you'll see the different apps that we have as a shop fitness calculator and our Rock Your Photos report. If you go to the Rock Your Photos report, basically we generate a report of one of your listings. Will have actual e-commerce shoppers go through and look at your photos on one of your listings, and they will give you feedback on those photos. They'll score them for the quality of the photo, so whether it's like blurry or clear or the contrast is good and whatnot. They'll score the appeal of your photo, so whether or not they find it to be a pleasant photo or not a pleasant photo, and then they score the clickability of your photo, which is, if I saw this photo on a screen, would I be compelled to click on it? So I could still find something appealing, but not necessarily be compelled to click on that actual photo. So those are the 3 areas they'll score you in. And then in the report, we kind of calculate an average and all that kind of stuff. Well, as we've been doing these, we've ran quite a few of these now for people. And as we're getting the feedback, it's always fun to kind of look at that and try to analyze that at a higher level and come up with some takeaways of things that we've learned from the photo reports that have come back in. And so I wanted to share a few of those things with you guys today that we've learned from the photo reports. And that is, one, that people find sometimes that the most clickable photo isn't necessarily the one that they're currently using as their primary image. So inside of Etsy, when you set up your listing, you get to pick which one is your primary, and that's the one that shows as the thumbnail in the search results. And when people are getting their scores back on their photos, they might find that the clickability rating on one of their other photos is stronger than the one that they have as their primary photo. So that's kind of interesting. Also, keyword ideas. So another thing that's in the photo reports is the reviewers will go in and they will come up with different keyword suggestions for your listing for you. And each person comes up with 9 separate keyword suggestions. And these are in 3 different categories. I won't get into the categories in too much detail, but one of the things that people have found is that people will throw out ways of describing things that they didn't even think of. So like different terminology, perhaps, that as you're kind of going through and messing with keywords on your own and doing the research, these aren't at the front of your mind. It's not like a natural jump for you to go there. But if someone else looks at this thing and says, oh, to me, that's a blah, 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 it could be completely different than what you had in your head for it. And so that's one of the other things that we found happens frequently in these reports. Also, sometimes the images that are coming back confuse people as to what is actually being sold. So let's see, an example would be if I have a listing and maybe I'm offering this in multiple colors. And so one of my images is like a color palette or a set of color swatches to use. That sometimes confuses the people who are trying to say how they would search for this thing. When they're looking at this color palette, they're thinking maybe they're selling a color palette or set of color palettes. So some of the keywords don't necessarily come back to be accurate for what that listing is. Maybe you could show the product in those different colors instead, and that might make it a little bit more clear with what's going on with those sorts of things. And also, on average, we've seen too that photos with busier backgrounds seem to get a lower clickability rating than photos with much simpler plain backgrounds. Even though Richie has stated that he personally really likes busy backgrounds. He likes when there's a lot of stuff going on in those pictures. So without further ado, though, we're going to jump into today's topic, which is failing forward. And Richie's going to talk about this a little bit. If you guys have questions while we're chatting here, feel free to throw those into the chat, the live chat in the blab, and we will field as many of those as we possibly can. So what is failing forward, Richie, and why does it sound like it's good and bad at the same time?
Well, failing forward is still allowing yourself to fail, but making sure that you've learned something from it so you've actually made forward progress. So it's a really important concept. Actually, someone commented about failing forward in a prior episode. which is, and I think it's just such a super important concept to highlight. So I thought it would be a worthy talking point, and it was, we should give it a little bit more time than just a comment. It was a great seed. So a lot of people, the problem here is they're afraid to fail and think there's only one path to success. So I tried this one thing and it didn't work. So, therefore nothing will work. But that's where this whole I'm doing everything right and it's not working statement comes from. Gordon, we hear this a lot, right? I'm doing everything right, it's not working. Yes, you found one way that's not working. You're doing what you thought would work and it's not working. But that just means, again, that you found something that doesn't work, and that's okay. So I personally like this one quote. I always think about this. The master has failed more times than you've ever attempted. So every time I try something and it doesn't work, I think, well, there's other people out here that have tried so many more times than me, and that's why they're seeing more success. Think about it. If you have a 1% success rate and you try 100 times, you'll get one success. If you try 1,000 times, you'll get 10 times more. So, the more you try, the more you get after it, the better things are going to go. Kind of like my shirt that I should be wearing right now. The good things happen when you hustle shirt. That was a fail on my part, right? But I'm going to take a look at that. And next time I talk about failing forward, I'm going to wear that shirt. So therefore I learned something and it's not a total failure. Something else. So recent events, I'm not sure if there are sports fans here. I don't really follow sports personally. But Kobe Bryant retiring was a really big deal recently. In his last game, which was a couple weeks ago, he scored more points than anyone his age. Commentators also pointed out, though, that he took 50 shots. Apparently, that's a lot. Again, not really sure, but everyone says that's a lot. But what will everyone remember, even just a year from now, about his last game? They're not going to remember the 20 or so shots he missed. They're going to remember the 60 points he scored more in his final game than anyone else his age. That, right? So you're taking a look at that and you could say, oh my gosh, you missed 20 shots. What a failure. Or you can focus on the bright spots. Look how well it turned out. So from that, I want to say, go out there and try more and fail more. Just try to, increase your percentage maybe as you go along. So when something doesn't work, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? And I think that's the biggest part about failing forward is when something doesn't work, what did you learn? Can you take that into the next experiment with you? Do you have anything you want to say on that, Gordon?
No, I was just wondering. So when you say experiments, what kind of experiments do you mean? Do you mean like messing with listings or changing up photos or pricing, or when you say experimenting, do you mean like inside of Etsy or just with products in general, or what?
In general, really. So, but when you're doing experiments, everything you just touched on, product pricing, photos, how you promote on and off Etsy, make sure you try those things, but don't switch up everything at once. Try not to switch up 5 things, right? Just in an experiment, just like back in science class, right? You want to have everything else to control and change one variable and see how it changes. So don't change your photos and your pricing and your description and all that all at once. You can't call that really an experiment. That's a total overhaul. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. If a lot of feedback is you do need a total overhaul, great. But that's your new baseline. And your experiments all go from there. So what I mean by experimenting is, okay, hold your stuff steady. And then if you want to see how a price change impacts, well, change your price, but don't change anything else. Because if you change your price and your photos, you're not sure which one had an impact. You might say, oh no, I'm getting less sales because I changed my price. My price went up, but you also changed your photo. It was just that little thing in your photo that kept people from buying it. But if you kept them the same, that higher price, it might have worked. So that's what I mean by experimenting. And also, just in business and in life, keep switching it up. Switch it up constantly. You will fail at things. And this is how you know you're trying. So of course, the magic is happening outside of your comfort zone. And this right here is an example. If you think this is comfortable, it's not, right? Being on video, talking about this type of stuff, this is episode 3. This is not something, I'm not a broadcast or whatever, an anchor, right? This is new for me. It's not a comfortable thing. So far it's been great, right? But this is episode 3. Will we make it to 100? I don't know. Is failure possible? Absolutely it is. But the distinction here is we're not trying to fail. We're not saying, okay, let's go out here and eventually fail. No, we're trying to win. It's okay to fail when you're trying to win, right? It's not okay just to fail for fail's sake. But just accept that it happens and take it as a learning opportunity.
So when you're trying to win and you're trying to come up with experiments to do of things that might work, where do you go for that? How do you find inspiration for different ideas and things to try? How do you know what to actually even attempt?
That's a great question. So one of the things I personally like to do is see what others are doing, but not just in my immediate space, but I try to take inspiration from everywhere. So just totally random adjacent businesses, kind of like that sports analogy, or not really analogy, but the whole Kobe Bryant thing, right? Like that type of thing makes me think about my life and our business and just what we have going on. But it's completely unrelated. Pretty much completely unrelated, right? It's sports. It's something different, something I don't even follow. Other places, I like to just kind of check out Twitter, different types of people, what they have going on, what they're doing in their different types of businesses. So even if you are doing a craft shop, if you're doing something crafty, check out what other businesses are doing. Check out what IBM is doing, what they have going on. I'm not saying copy that exactly, but just try to model and take things. For instance, Dropbox and their whole growth hack on the way you share. And if we both if you use my link to make an account, you get 500 megabytes. That was new when they started that. A lot of people have modeled that, people in all different types of businesses, not just storage type businesses. So where I get inspiration from for experimenting and trying things is everywhere. Just you're at the grocery store and you see a magazine and something's going on in there. Take a look at some of the headlines, some of the things that are going on. And inspiration's everywhere. You pick it up, you see it, and you say, how can I adapt that? How can I possibly make that maybe work for me? Just because it's working for someone else means it might work for you.
So you're saying there's like not a magic guide, right? I can't just follow this set of steps and boom, success.
No, there is no magic guide. There are only pointers to it. So it takes a lot of bad ideas to find a good one. It's a lot like panning for gold, right? You sift through a lot of worthless dirt to find a small bit of gold. But that's the game. That's life. It's the thrill of the chase that you have to love. If you're going to keep doing this and you're going to be successful, however you define success, it's got to be the thrill of chasing that. Because there really isn't just a magic formula. If there was, everyone would be doing it. And everyone wants an exact recipe for success, the blueprint to find that gold. But hey, has anyone ever watched the show Gold Rush? Gordon, have you seen the show?
I have.
Kevin, have you seen Gold Rush?
Gold Rush from the Discovery Channel?
That's the one. Yeah, it's been in Alaska.
Yeah. I watched it once, but that's about it.
Okay. I watched a couple seasons of it. I haven't caught the latest ones, but man, those guys fail a lot. They sift through a lot of dirt. They start every season with every hope. They map out, everything. They have scientific reasoning. They take core samples, which is basically when you drill into the dirt and you pull up dirt and find out if there's gold there. They do all this and plan all this out ahead of time, and they have a very short season in which they can try to extract gold. And they always think they're going to find millions of dollars in gold. But season after season, they're failing in some way. Their machines break. Their gold is deeper than expected. Weather freezes them out because they're in Alaska. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's Murphy's Law. And it happens to them time after time. But
yeah, if they found gold every time, they probably would make a very good TV show out of that, I guess.
No, it'd be a horrible TV show. Guys go up to Alaska, dig a little bit of dirt, make millions of dollars, and retire.
That's it. And
that's it. Credits. That's the show. Roll credits. Yeah, it was 10 minutes long. 2 episodes. But they always managed to find the bright side. One of the things that I really admire about those guys, TV or not, is they get out there, bad things happen to them, but they are positive about it. They are always glass half full. They always take the time to learn from the mistakes, and they have those kind of retrospectives on the show too. They'll talk about the things that happened, things in their control, out of their control, how they could have planned for them. They keep baking those into the next seasons. So when every season starts, they talk about what happened last season, what they're going to do differently, whether or not maybe they didn't have the expertise, the right equipment, the right soil, all that fun stuff. And that's kind of one of those ideas of where to get inspiration from too. I mean, we watch TV, you watch things like that, and you see other people who are trying to make a difference. And I think that's where you find inspiration. And as far as where they're trying to make a difference, that whole show is premised on the way the economy has changed and things like that. In their area, there's a lot of economic downturn. These people had a bunch of different types of businesses, different lines of work that started to disappear. So this whole, gold rush thing they got pushed into wasn't just because they had, great jobs with great promotions going on and decided to leave it to go chase gold. They were kind of forced into it. They didn't have much else to do. They had to take a jump. So they're trying to make a big difference and pave new trails. And I find that inspiring.
When you're looking at other people for ideas, how do you know what would be a good indicator that that's something to attack or even try?
That's a good question. So, I mean, it's all about what's going to work for you, right? So just because something's working for someone else, you need to emphasize it must work for you. How do you figure that out? That's where kind of being creative comes in, right? I mean, you're a creative entrepreneur, be creative. Try to figure out, okay, these people are doing this. Can I figure out why it might be working? Right. So let me go back to that Dropbox example that a lot of people have copied, that whole kind of 1-for-1 type thing. Before them, it wasn't very common to do sign up with my link and we're both going to get something. Why does that work? Well, the reason it actually works is because they've made it socially acceptable to share. It's not just a shameless promotion. It's not just a shameless, I'm going to harass all my family and friends to sign up to this thing because I'm going to get something. It's hey, we're both going to get something. So a lot of companies have done that since then. Now, if you just ran out and copied it exactly, there's probably a lot of stuff you can copy that will work if you just copy it exactly. But there's also, you probably increase your chance of, the bad kind of failure if you just blindly go try things. So when you see something, think about, okay, that's working for them, but why? And do I have a similar environment that, I can use and maybe model it a little bit and, make that work for me as well? So that's how I think you can figure out what might work for you. Figure out if you have the right kind of environment, understanding why it's working, and see if you can adapt it. And if it's working for someone else, that's a good indication that might work for you too. I mean, there's no reason you have to completely reinvent the wheel here. There's this book called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It's a really good book. He also has a book called Show Your Work. That's a very similar book to it as well. He's on Creative Live with Chase Jarvis, stuff like that. Very inspirational, cool guy. And basically what he's talking about is not to copy things, but basically model after what is working for others. Steal like an artist. Take something. One of his premises is there's no original thought anymore. Everything is some derivative of something else. All right. So if you're looking at art, commercials, business models, everything is some sort of derivative of it. Nothing is completely brand new.
Donna from Princess Bridal in the chat just chimed in and said she did basically exactly what you're saying recently. She saw something that one of her competitors was doing and changed it to be kind of more her style. And now it's one of her best sellers, it sounds like.
See, that's fantastic. That is a great example. Saw something that's working and saying, hey, I'm not going to make exactly that, but I'm going to convert that to my style for my audience. And boom. That's fantastic. Donna, thank you for sharing. All right. So speaking about what might work, Marmalead is an indicator. Based on what we see is working, we show you what has a good chance of working for you too. Nothing is definitive though, right? The Marmameters aren't definitive. They're not the end-all solution, right? Beware of snake oil that claims to be the end-all solution, because nothing really beats getting your hands dirty and testing, right? Everyone here listening is a creative entrepreneur. No one's looking to, create the next piece of art, with science or math or a machine, right? I mean, you're looking to get your hands dirty. You're looking to do something tactile. So that's what you have to do. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, yeah, we kind of heard that last week with Jen too. She was saying that when she first got started selling, and she does jewelry on Etsy, she started by studying all kinds of other listings and shops and seeing exactly what they were doing. She had this book. She had printed out like listings in a book that she was studying and figuring out like, okay, what are patterns here? What are people doing? And what seems to be working for that?
Absolutely. There's nothing more powerful than the human mind and doing actual testing and just seeing what works. Get your hustle on. The only part of SEO that's science is how to rank, right? All those things like the H1 tags, which is, your top level header, stuff like that, your meta descriptions, all that stuff, right? Keyword density, all the things that don't even matter on Etsy. Those are all, it's different for every search engine. We focus on Etsy because that's where your shop is. And the main value main value proposition for being on Etsy is that they bring the audience. So really, if you're trying to rank in those other search engines, have your own site. That's a whole nother animal. For an Etsy, definitely focus on, you're there because they're bringing the audience. Same reason you go to a craft fair, stuff like that, right? They're bringing the audience. You show up and it's your job to close the sales and be found and be at the booth that people want to stop at. But, you're not the one advertising. You're not promoting around the city saying, hey, come to this craft show. And that's kind of like what Etsy is. It's just an online version. So, what to target is all about testing if it works for you. So Marmalead with the Marmometer, stuff like that, right? It's giving you indicators of this might work. Now go get after it and try it. See if it'll work for you. Just because you can rank doesn't mean you should. And that's one of those problems with Google Keyword Planner. I guess, so yeah, one of the, just because it has search volume doesn't mean you can rank for it. Just because it has search volume and you can rank for it doesn't mean you should, right? Totally different animal, totally different topic, I guess. We can get into another one. We will get into another one because we definitely have more content to talk about Google Keyword Planner on that, don't we, Gordon?
A little bit.
All right.
So actually that kind of brings up another question too for me is you mentioned Google Keyword Planner. When you're doing this and you're trying a bunch of stuff, and admittedly probably a lot of them are going to fail, but that's all right? The whole idea is to keep trying.
Absolutely.
How do you measure those things, right? Like, how do I know? There's so many different ways to measure something, whether something's working or not working. I've got all kinds of numbers I can be looking at. You mentioned Google Keyword Planner. That's just one of the other numbers that I can be using. How should I be measuring this stuff and seeing if these things that I'm trying are actually working?
That's a great question. What I'd say is from the bottom up, right? So sales on up. You want to reverse engineer what's getting you sales. You want to reverse engineer what is working. Kind of the same concept of, you want to plant seeds and look for sprouts. When you see them, do more of that. Is it working for you? Because that's what matters. We see shops every day that worry about numbers that don't matter. Google Keyword Planner numbers. Well, you're not on Google. How often do you tweet? Okay, well, a better question is, when I tweet, how many people are engaging with it, right? These are spaces that are very noisy. How often do you post on Facebook? Again, does anybody care that you're posting on Facebook? That's what you should matter about, not these top line numbers. And that's a big conversation with everything going on right now with all the switch ups in social media. I know, Gordon, we've talked about it before, Snapchat, and how all these different marketers are, that's the next big platform and everything.
I love Snapchat.
I know you do. You were resistant to it, and now you love it. and one of the big things that is being talked about is people are upset about Snap. Some people are upset about Snapchat because it doesn't give you all these numbers, like how many followers you have, and a bunch of these top level numbers that don't really matter. But the ones that are getting into it, they're saying, well, it's great because this is influencer marketing. The people that do watch my stories, that do watch my snaps, they're engaging and they have to show up within 24 hours to watch the story or it disappears. So it's a rolling thing. And it shows you how many people are watching. Not how many people are subscribed or something like that, these top level numbers. Because it doesn't matter how many followers you have if, only 5 people are actually reading your tweets, and your mom, dad, brother, sister, and Gordon, unless they're buying all your stuff, it doesn't matter, right? So it doesn't matter if you have 500,000, if only 5 are actually reading it.
That's a good point, man. So this reminds me of a guest on a podcast that I had heard once, and I think it was social media marketing podcast. But the guy was talking about marketing and specifically Twitter and social media and how you measure whether or not that's working, right? Because executives all the time want to be measuring like, okay, all this dollars that I'm dumping into social media and these posts and stuff that I'm doing, like what's the metric to use to know if that's actually working or not, right? And his kind of response was that you can't put like a financial number on this stuff. You can't have like a return on your investment into social media. You can't have, okay, we spent X dollars and that brought in so much revenue, because you can't necessarily always track it back through to this tweet caused somebody to buy something, right?
Yes.
So he kind of framed it more as return on relationship. And I think that rings true. I kind of dabbled in game development in my free time a while ago. I still do kind of, but I dabbled more frequently previously. And one of the things that I found when we were on Twitter, right? Like I was thinking, I'll go out there, I'll collect a bunch of followers, I'll tweet about my games, and like, boom, open the floodgates. Like there's going to be so many people buying these things through the App Store and whatnot. Yeah, I probably got a couple sales that way, but the main thing that I got back from being on Twitter and like talking to people and specifically finding things that we had in common to tweet back and forth about was the relationships that came from that, you know, and people that wanted to contribute, whether it was, you know, somebody who wanted to provide music for some of the games that we were working on, or somebody that wanted to even work on a game together. We had a couple studios that were like, hey, let's do a game together. You guys seem pretty decent. So those kinds of things that came out of it, which I wasn't expecting at all, seemed way more powerful than just the dollar signs in that I was expecting to get from having, you know, X number of followers brings X number of dollars whenever I tweet a link to my games.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's all about who's listening, right? Not about what you're saying, but about who's listening to it. So one of the other things that pops up that I want to mention as far as like things that don't matter, Google PageRank. So Google PageRank, Gordon, you and I were talking about this the other day, and it's not what people think it means. You think PageRank means something about your ranking on a page, but it's actually named after Larry Page, one of the co-founders of Google. And it's his system, it's his algorithm for ranking the quality of a website. So
it's like Reese's, right? You think it's Reese's because it's a peanut butter cup, but really it's not. It's Reese's. It's his, right? It's a name. It's apostrophe S. It's his peanut butter cup.
Just like that. At least with the peanut butter cup, you still know what to expect. So PageRank can be kind of confusing there. Plus, Etsy shops and whatnot aren't really set up well for that, right? So search engines love content. And they gauge things based on content and how credible this website is and what people are looking for, which is typically research. So be careful of PageRank out there. Above all, as far as things to look at, your time. Your time is precious. And what you need to do is what matters, because you don't have time for anything else. So when you're looking at numbers, when you're looking at what to focus on, what to test, make sure you're using the absolute best use of your time. Because if you're looking at a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter, like just blindly growing your followers or likes or Facebook friends or anything like that, right? Keep focusing on what's working. When you get a sale, figure out where that sale is coming from and actually talk to people, talk to your customers, find out where they're, why they're buying, where they came from, all that stuff. You need to learn so much about them, because otherwise it's all just kind of blind. And what you need is a system for prioritizing what activities you think will help most. Because whenever we do any sorts of brainstorming, right, you can come up with hundreds of ideas, but the time to actually execute those ideas is pretty scarce because you're doing so much more, especially when you are a small team or a solopreneur. You just don't have time, right? Like you need to spend that time doing what makes your business a business. And while there's a lot of other parts about a business, right? There's all the different operational components, financial components, and just kind of the day-to-day keeping the lights on. But there is a core thing you do, and that's providing product to your customer that is of value to them. And that's what you need to spend most time doing. And second to that is evangelizing that and making sure people know it. But with that, you need a system for figuring out which is the next thing to try, and the next one, and the next one, the next one.
How do you find that system?
How do you find the system?
Yeah.
Well, you either figure out that system yourself, or you see what other people are doing, other proven systems. Because again, one of those why reinvent the wheel? If that system's already out there and it's working for somebody else, then model your system off their system and do that. There's a ton of books kind of spread all over the place that talk about those type of things. So you could read those. There are people that specialize in it, right? Especially in software, that's a big thing right now with the agile and all the product management and whatnot. They have systems for this. Something called a growth hackathon has a certain model to it. That type of thing. There are other systems out there, and you can model after those.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm not quite ready to talk about that right yet. But something is coming. No, it's all good. Something is coming. I just, a little anticipation. Don't want to give it all away right here. But something along those lines is coming. But, above all, you are a creative entrepreneur, be creative, right? That's what you got to do. Just keep being you. If a machine told you exactly what to do, then all 1.6 million sellers would do the same thing. And how well do you think that would work? It wouldn't.
Probably wouldn't work too well.
No, it wouldn't work anymore, right? Same with the machine. If a machine told you what product to make, hey, machine, what product should I make today? Well, then you have 1.6 million sellers making that product today. And again, it's not going to work. So what I want you to do is forget about the top level numbers, right? They're just noise. You can buy followers on Twitter. You can buy followers on Facebook. Does that work? No. That does not translate to sales. You can have teams view and favorite your listings. I hope they're buying from you, because if it's not, it's probably it's definitely hurting your conversions, and that's probably hurting your rank. Because why would Etsy or any other platform be putting a bunch of listings towards the top of search that are getting views but not sales? Because remember, they get paid on sales too. So, treat it like a business, because that's what everyone else is doing. Not all the shops, but that's what the businesses are doing. That's what the marketplaces are doing. So treat it that way. If I was going to put on a craft fair, I'd want to bring the absolute best shops in, the ones that close the most sales, because the ones that close the most sales are going to have the highest satisfaction amongst customers, because customers are going to come in, they're going to say, oh my gosh, it was awesome, I bought so much stuff. So aim to be those shops. Everyone thinks that they want this big dashboard full of numbers, right? Because it looks very important, right? Like a jet console, right? Like, look at all those gauges and everything, right? There's triplicates of stuff. It's that important. It's fantastic. But with this type of thing, it's all noise, right? It's just noise. The numbers, everyone wants those to go up and to the right, right? We're familiar with that. Those are called vanity metrics, and they look great on charts, especially for executives, but they're not useful. So those are distraction. You don't want it. So, of course, I've told you all these things you don't want. What do you want? Well, you want the simplest view of what might work and what is working that you can possibly have. And sometimes that just seems underwhelming, because you think, well, this all seems really complicated. Shouldn't there be more numbers? Shouldn't I make this more complicated to feel like I'm working? No, that'll just overwhelm you. You want the bare minimum. You want numbers for engagement. So you want your sales, your views, your favorites. These are your currency. These are what you want to do. And again, you want to prioritize activities that maximize those. And soon we'll tell you more about how you can do that.
Like how soon? like in 30 seconds.
I don't think like 30 seconds soon, but maybe in like a few days you'll get like a cryptic email like hinting at something new.
Follow the rabbit.
And then maybe there'll be like a webinar with like a live Q&A to talk about more about what it is. It'll eventually like build up into like a grand launch of something that's totally different and new.
But this is all part of it, right? What we're talking about today with failing forward.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Failing forward is part of everything. But yeah, it's pretty tightly coupled to that as well. Yeah. Again, it's trying things. It's trying the things you think have the most success, learning from them, carrying those forward. And if you do that, can't lose, because you're constantly trying new stuff. It is.
Yeah, I definitely think one of the things, the keys is making sure you're learning from the failures, right? Like you're saying earlier. I mean, it's easy to try a bunch of things. Obviously, the things that work are great. That's an happy right there, right? When they work out for you. But just as important, if you're not learning from the ones that aren't working, then it is kind of a waste of time. But if you are learning from those things and maybe trying something different, right? Like maybe this specific way didn't work, but I'm going to try something that's similar to that, but different in this other way, right? Kind of piggybacking off of ideas. That's cool. Like find the things and then learn from those things that aren't working, so that no matter whether something works or doesn't work, it's still a bonus, right? It's still a positive thing.
Absolutely. That kind of comes into the whole, it's okay to fail as long as you're not trying to fail, right? If you're trying to win, and then you look at it retrospectively, because you carry that in everything else. Even if the next idea isn't related to the one that just didn't work, just like all the inspiration, just because, they're not related doesn't mean that you can't get inspiration on okay, that was a good learning thing, right? Just teachable moments. All right, let's see. So I see over in the chat, I haven't really been reading these because I've been talking. Have you been keeping up on these, Gordon?
I do. We have a question from Emily over there. And so this isn't necessarily directly related to failing forward, but she does have a good question here. And I don't know the answer, but maybe you can make one up. She says something I've wondered about. Does Etsy rank the shops higher when they're using Etsy checkout for purchases? She thinks that might be true.
I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that. I would be surprised if they did. I'd think they'd be more interested in just overall conversions. So whether or not they're using PayPal or checkout, I know that checkout is theirs, but they still do get charged a credit card fee. So I know there's a fee to it, but they get charged a fee also. So I'm not sure what their actual profit is when you use Etsy checkout versus PayPal. But in the grand scheme of things, if they're putting listings forward that have the best chance of a sale, that's going to by far outweigh I'm going to put this one higher because there's, it's using our checkout versus someone else's.
Sounds like you have a contractor over there doing some work for you, Rich.
It does sound that way. Very little contractor. Keep it in the family, right? All right, let's see. Comp was doing and changes to my style. Oh, okay. I see that. Okay. And when? Well, that's part of the anticipation. Soon. Soon. Keep an eye out for those emails.
Absolutely.
All right. Any more questions, comments?
Soon is not soon enough, says Rebecca.
Very true. Truer words have never been spoken. Yeah. As soon as Kevin finishes it, that's when we'll watch it.
Yeah. Come on, Kev.
All right.
Well, very good. Very good. Thank you, everybody who joined us today in the live blab. That's always an option for people who might just listen to the podcast. If you join us in the blab, you're able to throw questions into the chat and comments. I think it's good discussion today about failing forward. Richie had some really good stuff to say. I encourage all you guys to get out there, try as many different things as you can. Make sure you're learning from those things, and hopefully you find success with some of them. And when you do, obviously, keep doing those things. So kind of a motivational speech today by Richie. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time on Etsy Jam.